Hi everyone, welcome to another session in our Catalysts of Change fireside chat series that features conversations with technology leaders and practitioners at the forefront of digital innovation. These conversations cover challenges, innovative approaches, and lessons learned from leading digital transformation. My name is Sudha Srinivasan. I'm the VP of Product Marketing and Strategy at Yugabyte. It is my pleasure to welcome as our guest today, Guy Cirello. Guy Cirello is the head of technology and innovation and COO at FiServ Inc., where he oversees the company's technology and operations with a focus on driving innovation and delivering superior value for clients through the development and delivery of leading technology products and targeted innovation. Guy has been at the forefront of fintech, banking, technology, and innovation for more than 30 years. He has led product development and technology for 3 Fortune 500 companies and is recognized as a leader in the technology industry. Prior to the combination of FiServ and First Data Corporation, Guy was the president of First Data Corporation, a global leader in commerce enabling technology. Prior to First Data, he was the chief information officer at JP Morgan & Chase, where he led global technology across all lines of business in more than 60 countries. Before that, he also served as a CIO of Morgan Stanley, where he began his career in financial services. Guy has been recognized multiple times by Institutional Investor magazine among its top tech 50 and by Information Week as a global CIO top 50. He was a NASSCOM CIO of the Year and is considered a key advisor by many leading Silicon Valley companies and technology CEOs in the industry. Guy is a philanthropic leader who's been recognized by numerous organizations for his charitable efforts. Guy currently sits on the board of trustees of Capital Health and has served as an executive committee member or advisor to numerous nonprofits. Speaking with Guy today are Bill Cook, CEO of Yugabyte, and Karthik Ranganathan, CTO and co-founder of Yugabyte. Bill, over to you.
Thanks, Sudha, for that introduction. And Guy, thank you for joining this session. Although after that introduction, I think we're about out of time now. You're back. What all you've done.
Could you please do me a favor and make sure that my wife hears that part, because we don't talk about this stuff anymore.
So thanks for doing this. This is really looking forward to this session. Our main objective here is really to talk about really the lessons learned, if you will, over your career, and now specifically at FiServ, driving innovation and technology. And as you know, Guy, it's not just about the technology side of it. Actually, that in some ways is the easy part. The people, the org, all of those dynamics when you're trying to drive innovation or transformation is super challenging. So, and the other thing I wanted to comment on, Guy, I know you did this a similar chat with Tom Mendoza a few months ago with the Notre Dame organization. And you both talked a lot about leadership and the elements of leadership and leadership development. And I think we should just reference that. Sudha will put the link up so people can visit that link and hear about leadership and what you're doing. And we're going to focus more on technology and innovation on this talk. And before I jump in, I guess just, our backgrounds together. You mentioned JP Morgan and First Data and now FiServ. And, the comment that you first made about your start at Morgan Stanley and starting in the database. So if you could just share a bit about that, how you got started, because it does correlate to our topics today.
That's great. First of all, congratulations to Karthik, to you. You've built a great team here and a fabulous product. I think having Bill join you is a great decision, and Bill and I have a relationship for many years, and I know the combined leadership of both of you really given to the company that you guys are leading today. I know will produce a great result. So that's terrific. And look, my own life, we talk about Morgan Stanley. I was working. I came out of college with what I thought was going to be a degree in computer science, and right before I graduated, the semester before, I changed it to a business degree because I wanted to make sure that everything I learned I could turn to be something commercial. And, I took a job working for the state treasury of New Jersey. They taught me, how to enhance my software skills with some things that I did there. But after about 18 months, the pace for me just wasn't the way I wanted to live my life. And my wife was literally, I think she was 8 months pregnant, and I went home and I said, I'm going to leave my job. And she said, what are you talking about? I said, a friend of mine called me, and I went up for an interview. I didn't say anything because I didn't want you to get nervous. I went up for an interview with Morgan Stanley. An hour interview turned into 5 hours. They grilled me nonstop. I was able to answer every technical question and build some things for them while we were talking. And I'm going to go do this job. She said, great, what are you getting paid? I said, well, it's a 30-day consulting agreement. I said, well, she said, what do you mean? And what happens after 30 days? I said, after 30 days, if they don't hire me, I don't have a job. She said, oh my God, what are we going to do? I said, don't worry. And that's the way honestly, if you take me back to Morgan Stanley, that's really where, my head has been my whole life, which is, very confident but humble. And in many respects, always wanted to be the absolute best at the things that I did. And I decided, I didn't know whether I was going to be a software engineer my whole life, but I decided I was going to get as many experiences in as short a period of time as possible so that I could figure out how to put those together in a unique way that really would be differentiating in the marketplace. And I walked into Morgan Stanley as a DBA. And, at that point in time, I was learning, older technologies, database and natural. Then, we moved into the distributed systems world with Sybase and Oracle. And then we moved into, a whole series of advanced open source type database technologies. And I did a lot of other things, after that, including being the CTO, and then was really the first CIO of Morgan Stanley that didn't come from a business. And that was why I was prefacing some of the comments earlier about, staying commercial. I think that my whole view on innovation in my life has been that, find the diamonds in the rough, mentor and shape them to really be 10x performers, but focus them on, real life commercial results. Otherwise, these beautiful ideas will hang on the vine and never get mature. So what Morgan Stanley taught me was to do everything from be under a desk playing with wires, to being in a data center playing with wires, to writing software, to learning databases, to building trading systems, to running large groups of people and learning how to get a company positioned. And the favorite thing I did there, Bill, you may not remember, but I was basically an extension at Morgan Stanley to one of the best tech investment banking groups in the world. In fact, Morgan Stanley is still one of the best tech investment banking groups. So I've been on the trading floor for many IPOs through the internet era. Google, the one that I remember most fondly because we wrote the Dutch auction software, and I've been in most places in the world building trading technology, and that's kind of what shapes. These experiences early shape people, and those are some of the things that really shaped me in the early part of my career.
That's great, and I remember you attending the IPO Pivotal as well. So
I was there.
Yeah, it was fun. And I was just thinking about your comment on the people side, because we have a lot of people, technologists that will be watching this. And what is your advice to them as they think about adopting new technologies for, basically what they know, skills they have today, and then as new things are emerging, what's your advice as a leader to technical people in your organization?
Look, I think, Karthik, you probably subscribe to this as well. I look for highly inquisitive people. And most people I don't hire for their job, I hire for a career. Literally, before I came here today, we're talking about popping up an innovation center. And I was talking to one of the top recruiting firms in the country about what I want to hire and what I'm looking for. And, we spent time, and they, they brought me a whole series of people and thoughts and resumes, just like somebody might do if you were building a house. Here's like 40 different options. And honestly, I took them and I didn't rip them up. I put them on the side of the table and I said, you got it wrong. This isn't the way you build a team. And what you have to focus on are people like, and there were a lot of big bank, performers, and, everybody's expensive, just like software companies are expensive these days. But I look for people who are sort of in the midpoint of their career. I measure how many experiences they've been able to attain. How many things can they talk to me about? And then how many things can I talk to them about? Meaning the inquisitiveness. Like, what are they interested, not only what they're doing today, but what are they interested in when they leave the office? And that doesn't have to be software or technology, that could be anything, but are they inquisitive? And one of the first things I often say to people when I walk into a room when I have a problem is your opinion matters. Sometimes I say, if you don't have an opinion, you can leave now because I don't want to embarrass you. But if you're in this room helping me solve this problem, I don't need problems, I need solutions, and all your ideas are equal, in this meeting, and let's see, what we could do to advance. So for me, I think really important things for some of the people in your company and listening to this would be absolutely number one, if you're talking to me in a conversation, I care about who you are, what you've learned, and how you want to conduct yourself going forward, the inquisitiveness piece. The second thing I look for is, have you been able to collect a number of experiences? So some people, just want to be narrow and deep. I'm okay with that. But what kind of experiences in that narrow and deep landscape? Other people want to be the other part of the T. I call this the T. Other people want, broader, whatever it is, you really have to think about your career over a timeline and make sure that everything you do leads to something. And, then after that, I'm looking for diamonds in the rough. I believe, you guys know me, and a lot of people at Yugabyte don't. I'm a very humble person. But the one thing that I do, I take people who are the rough diamonds and turn them into the most beautiful, exquisite diamonds in the world. And that's really, when I left Morgan Stanley to go to JP Morgan, I brought very few people. When I left JP Morgan to go to First Data, I brought very few people. And I say that only because I didn't want it to be like the political system. The Democrats go in, Republicans come out, the Democrats come in, everybody shifts. That's the lazy person's way. The goal is, how do you find raw talent? How do you cultivate it and groom it over time? And how do you make it leadership? Technical track leadership, managerial leadership, in all aspects. So to me, that's the most fun. And and that's why when I was joking earlier about my wife, what I say to my wife all the time, forget what people say about me. Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, First Data, now FiServ, you can't do 4 and be successful unless you have a formula. You can't depend on luck, and you can't depend on the same, 5 people to do it. You have to have a formula, and I feel confident that that formula I just described works for me, and I think that gives good input for people listening on how they can fit into it.
That's great. So maybe let's switch gears here for a second, Guy, and maybe pull up a level. I mean, when if you think about the journey at JP Morgan, then First Data, and now FiServ, you've seen waves of technology hit, and really this notion of digital innovation or cloud native, whatever words you want to put on it. As you look forward, what are the most important technology trends you're thinking about today?
Well, I don't know. I could give you a combination of answers, because the ones that I think are important are also the ones I love. So, the ones that excite me are the ones that I like to talk about. I am like on AI in general. So I believe the reason I left JP Morgan to go to First Data were numerous, but one of them was that First Data, because it was a leader in its industry, 40% market share in merchant acquiring and payments, compared to the next competitor, which was at maybe high single digits at the time, meant that it had data and information that nobody else in the world had. Visa, Amex, MasterCard, Discover, debit, credit, gift, EBT. It had a wealth of information that nobody else in the world had. And with that in mind, I always felt like, I always said to myself, what Google did was turn the landfill into the gold mine. Could I take First Data's landfill and turn it into a gold mine? And, some would say maybe we did, maybe we didn't, but we sold the company for $20 or $40 billion, depending on how you want to count it. But so I would say it's reasonably successful, because when I got there, it was bankrupt and losing, nearly $4 billion a year. So the bottom line is, if you can find assets that can't be rivaled, you have a starting point that nobody else has. Then the second thing is if you can figure out how to turn it, that data, into truly not only information that you can plot history for, but you could use it to predict the future, then you really have a significant advantage. And here we're now 12,000 transactions a second. We move money in some type of way 12,000 times a second. I know more than any economist in this country if I do my job right. I know more than maybe anybody else in the country as it relates to money movement, financing, and not just payments, but the way trillions of ACH move into bank accounts, the way people walk into businesses and spend money, the way they move money P2P. We got it all. So I believe AI, with some ML alongside of it, but I think AI is critically important, and that goes back to my days of being a database person. It was just the thing that stuck in my mind as most valuable. Look, I think digital is the new normal. For us, if you think about the fact that we serve 4,000 banks and millions of merchants, businesses are all digital now first from, a way that they go to market. Banks, the only way to differentiate themselves really is through omni-commerce or omni-channel. So digital has to be core. And if you're a small bank, it's pretty tough to deal against the JP Morgan or Wells Fargo or Citibank because you can't have all those branches. But if you have the right digital solutions, you can compete with anybody on an equal footing in the world, regardless of size and scale. You still need capitalization, but those are the key points. So for me, I think mobile and 5G are big movements because they can change the user experience while you could also bring incredible leverage to big and small. I always say make small big and big small. Big small means if you work in a big company, package your groups up, your neighborhoods up into smaller, or groups up into smaller neighborhoods and let them innovate at a rapid pace. And small big means once you do that, use this massive distribution channel like a FiServ has to get that solution to millions and millions and billions of people around the globe. So I think those two areas are critical. And then look, the pace, the thing that you're working on, 12,000 times a second. I have to be perfect. I have to be trusted 12,000 times a second from a security point of view. I have to be reliable from a responsiveness perspective. I have to be global in nature. I have to have state at all points in time. I have to have complete resiliency and continuous operations. So the reason I'm doing this with you today, to be honest, is not just only because I like you guys, which I do, but I believe that you're on the frontier of something that is very important. And the fact that you're cloud native and have all these other capabilities means that processing that you do, the information I keep there, the integration of my clients, which are all over the world, just become infinitely easier. So to me, that's really, those are really some of the things that matter.
Great, appreciate that. And maybe it's a good segue. And my background, Guy, at Pivotal, we did a lot of work on the application side, the platform side, getting to this cloud native world, microservices and the rest of it. And the database tier was candidly always a little bit problematic, right? And especially stateful, especially transactional databases, which was the attraction for me to join up with Conan and Karthik and Mikhail here at Yugabyte, and kind of why we exist. But maybe I'll turn this to Karthik for a second, and your story, Guy, there about people and working in smaller teams. I think it's similar to Karthik's experience at Facebook and how they operated from an engineering perspective.
And Karthik, do you remember the first time we spoke?
I do distinctly. Actually, one of the things that you waited to tell towards the middle or the end that you actually had a background in databases, because I was surprised. Oh wow, man, this guys just keeping up with everything. What's going on here? But yeah, I totally remember that. Yeah.
And for all your employees that are watching, and I think Bill, either was there or I told him afterwards. I said when you were done, I said not only do I understand everything you just said, but if you could do 2/3 of what you said, you're going to be an incredibly successful company. Incredibly successful company. And I really, that's why I say that up front, because I don't want to think that people listening that, that I'm just being nice to you guys because we're on video. I said that to Karthik after a good 30 minutes of conversation where I let him talk probably for the first 20. And I said, just talk as fast as you can. I want to digest and listen, and then gave him a bunch of opinions. But I was very, very impressed. I felt very optimistic about your company the minute I left. And I said to Bill afterwards, I said, you made a really good decision. I did.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Yeah, thanks for that. We'll definitely try to live up to it. You know, it's like amazing. So.
You better. I'm counting on
it. And maybe for the rest of the audience, maybe just spend a minute, Karthik, on why another database. Why, to the points Guy made. Why have another choice out there?
Yeah. So this is a question that, from the pre-founding thesis all the way to today, right? That's what the question that most people ask is, hey, there's 300 databases out there. Why are you building the next one, right? I think to us, I can probably add my color, but would love to hear it in your own words also, Guy. But the way we thought about this was the biggest objection that people have is to a new database API. Right? If you try to tell people, look, I found a new way to interact with data, you really have to learn this. You have to throw away everything you know, and you have to learn it. Probably take you 2 years to figure it out. And you put an app in production, and then you put a few more in production. So you're 5 years in, you're invested in this database, and then you figure out what you cannot do. That's kind of too late in the cycle to get out, and it's too late in the cycle to get an addition to the database. So you're stuck, right? And so your only option is to add another database. So the way we're going about it at Yugabyte, we said that is the primary pain, and that is the cognitive friction that people impose. And that is something we're not doing, because 300 databases, each with their own APIs, we don't need to invent a new one. We really need to take existing APIs and enhance them and enhance the functionality to really work in this cloud native world where it's really simple. Just 3 things stand out from the data perspective. I mean, there's a lot of things, but the primary 3 things are resilience and high availability, never go down, give me a high SLA, and scale. So don't let me get beaten by my own success. More people are using my service because they like it. And now you're like, oh my God, too many people are using it. Sorry, service is down, right? That's not a good place to be. And the third one is with the cloud, there's 200-300 data centers available in different geographic regions. Moving data around internationally, geographically, is a very important concern, right? So it's just those 3 core requirements. And of course, there are things like security and performance and observability and all of those, but just those 3 top level things paired with the known APIs, right? Which makes it really easy to onboard the entire ecosystem, not just the developer, right? So that's really how we thought about it. But would love to hear your perspective, Guy, on you talked about a lot of databases, right? You talked about how you started and went from Oracle, Informix, that whole section of database. So what is your thought on why another database?
Yeah, look, I've used them all: Cassandra, Cockroach, NoSQL. I've been around all of them. Why another house? Why another boat? Why another car? I love my Tesla. It's driving as a service, right? It's software, it's updated, it's always, somebody's doing something every minute to make it state of the art versus the traditional car you buy, which stands still, for most times. I think that if you want to continue to progress in a world, payments is the fastest moving sector. If you look at capital flows and investment, I think payments and fintech probably outpace most others, maybe with the exception of some of the eco and environmental activities by miles. And that means that with all that innovation coming, there are not only competitors coming right around the corner, but it means change. It means things are going to evolve very rapidly. So from where I sit, when I was at JP Morgan, my budget was $10 billion a year for tech, and I had 36,000 technology professionals. That's not the norm. That's not the world. And that'll change too, and go from there. Most companies have to figure out what's core and what's not. And the thing that I believe that you're doing and reinventing is the new normal for transactional processing. And there are some other competitors there, but you said, this is the thing I'm going to pick. I'm going to be the best at it, and I'm going to give you the things I rattled off earlier, right? It's going to be global. It's going to be it's going to be state, but maybe even multi-state. It's going to be continuous. It's going to allow me to have fragments of information searched and collected. I mean, you've done all the things that every other great database company has done, but unfortunately has not pulled together. You have pulled this all together, And as a result, it simplifies the world for me. And it means that everything I build, because I'm in a cycle of building the new and the next generation, the next digital frontier, it totally makes sense to do it with a next frontier solution set. So, look, I think in my whole life, I've been good and lucky. And I think you have to have both. You're good and lucky. Why are you lucky? You're lucky because of your timing, right? And either your timing was picked by you or your timing, was fortunate, but you have arrived on a scene with very good capabilities at a time when most people are thinking like I am right now about their future. And that's why it's time for another one. If you were 10 years ago or 5 years ago, or maybe even 3 years ago, I think your ramp pattern might have been, a little bit less of a slope, and people would have had to think about it in a more, judicious way. But here, the cloud native component, your capabilities, and I think the problem set that businesses are facing right now, you are like, in the perfect storm in a positive way. And, and that's why, I think so. And again, there's always there has to be luck. Like you have to get lucky with timing or lucky, by playing in traffic in certain ways. But you've really combined the two and created an advantage that I believe will be, very differentiating as long as you execute. Execution is key. Without execution, all this stuff doesn't matter. You have to execute and you have to scale. And most people like me are watching, can you scale? Like, we're ready to date, but are you really going to be able to handle us plus all your other new friends? And can this thing scale in a way? And Bill faced that at Pivotal, and Pivotal was a great company as well. But these are the things that will differentiate you, that make people say it was worth another database rather than why did I do that?
Yeah. And that's a good point, Guy.
Is that helpful? I mean, I hope
really helpful. And, our view is we have to earn the right every day with every client, right, to keep proving that. And that's our job one as we scale the company. So that's dead on. Guy, could you also comment, maybe just to go down a level and say within FiServ, maybe some of the use cases and environments that you're considering for technology like this?
Yeah, look, we started on the digital front. So we're taking, in our Fintech environment, we service banks with, not only their core bank processing, the core platforms that handle banking, but their teller systems, their ATM systems, their card issuance, their mobile and online banking, their business banking, their commercial banking. Every one of those areas, our clients have said to us, if they're in the lower end of the scale of stack, they want a completely packaged solution. And if they're at the higher end of the asset stack, they want a best of breed solution to integrate with our cores. So the way you're relevant is they want simple APIs to be able to do their processing. And in this case, transaction processing with another database. It could be, more AI or intelligence or trending or forecasting or things like that. They want high speed, always on, and not quite global, but certainly regional solutions to problems, but they want to be completely transparent. They want 24/7, not just always up, always available, but they want 24-hour processing. Banking is moving to real time, just as trading did. So they need solutions that really allow for truly real-time processing. So that means I process a transaction, it's now reflected in multiple states, it's an active design, and I can always know the state of either my bank, my settlement, my clearing, my lending. So for banking, it's really around the movement to digital and all the surrounds that we're building. It's about more and more real-time processing and continuous availability and continuous knowledge of state. And then in payments, it's really just like, it's every country, cash is in a downward trend, non-cash is in an upward trend, e-commerce and mobile commerce are off the charts. And for those types of client experiences and journeys and the types of transactions that we're doing, they just require not only a lot more sophistication, but they require us to be in the cloud, because we have to be wherever the clients want to meet us. If they want to meet us in my private cloud, that's great. If they want to meet us in the public cloud, that's great. You can do both, but the most important thing is, they want to meet us in these public domains to do all kinds of activity and processing. And I don't want to have to move the data, to so many different places that it becomes unwieldy. We want to create this sandbox, this container that, that really, that we think really expresses the client value and, real-time information to their clients. They want to do real-time marketing in line with the payment. That's got to happen in 20 milliseconds. That can't take 3 seconds or the next day. It's got to be real. We want to draw people, into a variety of different experiences that are very different than today. And that's what people want. They want what they want, when they want it, wherever they are, in the simplest form possible. And all of that plays to, what you've created here. And again, I just hope that we can figure out how to use it. But I also, and you don't have to answer it today, but the question, again, for your listeners, this is what I would do if we were in a room.
Yeah.
I'd say, Bill and Karthik, pretend you're running FiServ and you have Yugabyte at your disposal. How would you use it? Where would you put it? How would you maximize value? And that's, that's the way that I would love your employees to think, because I'll take those ideas every day of the week, because I bet every one of your employees interacts with a bank. I bet you every single one of them interacts. They either interact in a branch, at an ATM, at some other form of kiosk, has a credit card, has a debit card, uses a mobile platform, does all, every one of them do that. How would you use Yugabyte as a consumer interacting with one of your banks? That's us, except for the top 6 or 7 banks. We got most of them in the country, or at least half of them. And in payments, like, we're doing the world's payments. How would you change the interactions that you have? We've seen things go to contactless. We've seen different type of payment methodologies. We've seen fraud go off the chart again, because as you get into these, into these more digital type purchasing patterns, knowing who the person is behind it, even if it's not a person, is critically important. So how do you either stop fraud or increase authorization optimization? Like, those are the things, that we have to do. We have to render probably, maybe not terabytes, but we certainly have to render gigabytes of information about a person making a purchasing decision in less than 100 milliseconds and be perfect every time. Because if we decline it and it's wrong, the client doesn't like us. And if we approve it and it's wrong, the client doesn't like us, because there's fraud that goes with it. So we get paid to actually be perfect. No false positives, all good transactions. The closer we get to 100% accuracy is key. How am I going to do, honestly, how am I going to do that without Yugabyte? How am I going to do that? How am I going to do that? I could, if I built my own database, I'd love to do it again. I did it once or twice already. That's not the answer. I'd rather really smart people like you do that instead of me.
It's hard to do. Yeah.
Does that make sense? I mean, I always try,
no, it makes
I'm assuming sense. It's relevant. Yeah.
Yeah, and Karthik, maybe you comment. I mean, based on Guy's expectation for Yugabyte at FiServ, anything you're concerned about? What you just heard him rattle off?
This is actually like completely in line with what we're building for. I think that's the good news. Like, it's very exciting as well to see, like, just like, I think you hit it even early on. You were mentioning how it's technology for the sake of technology is less interesting. Technology that unlocks business problems and commercial value is really the most interesting, right? So I think that's really what I think you were alluding to, Guy, right? And which is really awesome. So the fact that we're building this technology, but it has really so many different applications, right? And the applications are here and now and happening in the real world. I think that's really an incredible thing. And it also speaks to what you said about, timing and luck and all of that. Like, it just has to happen together, right? So, but anyway, so what I would say with respect to some of the things we can do at Yugabyte, right? Like, I mean, it's a very similar pattern to what we saw at Facebook and in a number of other places. The pattern is one of building many different types of user experiences or applications, like micro applications, and you have to keep doing that all the time, right? Like for example, you want to enable a new type of fraud detection, or you want to make sure that a person is able to do a P2P payment in a new country. Each of this is a micro experience that you would keep enabling, right? So it's almost a continuum that keeps happening all the time. some of these micro applications would become insanely popular, and some of them would be basically important table stakes, and some of them would fall by the wayside, right? That's kind of the way you reinvent the platform over time, right? So do this for enough time, and your current state is quite different from the starting state, and your users start to love the product that you have as FiServ, and as any company that's becoming digital, really, right? So for us, like on the Yugabyte side, some of the things that we like specifically try to enable in this journey is the fact that you don't have to think about the API, because your developers already are familiar with APIs, and we do everything possible in our power to stick to whatever those APIs do, right? And sometimes we do realize some of these API constructs are like, quirky, and they may not be the best to work in a distributed world, but sometimes we still include those features just for simplicity, right? Get off and running really quickly, as opposed to figure out, what, there's that one quirky API I depend on that really doesn't scale in the cloud native world, but I don't need it to scale. I just need it in order to move fast, right? So those are some of the decisions which are, I guess, counterintuitive to the database itself, but it's still important from a product perspective that we put inside. Right? And contrast that all the way with things like, for example, if you want to replicate data, you talked about payments in different countries, right? One of the things we're hearing is it's not just the user experience, it's also the regulation, right? Like you want to keep all of those payment transactions local, right? Like, and GDPR will say one thing, and India will say a different thing, and Brazil will say yet another thing. And so it's now getting really complex as to what the rules and the regulations are, and what kind of residency rules that apply. And we find ourselves in a good place to solve those type of issues with different types of replication, right? Like if you remember back in the day with Oracle, or even now actually, you could do like Oracle with Golden Gate, like that's the only solution, right? Is asynchronous replication, single or bidirectional, is done, right? But with Yugabyte, like because of the fact that replication is built in, yeah, you can do synchronous, asynchronous, you can partition the data into partition tables and do synchronous within region, but kind of split the data in a single logical table across. So users that travel from one country to another and do transactions in different countries can keep the transactions local to the different countries they visit, yet and satisfy regulation, yet make the app development simple, right? So I'd say these are some of the interesting things, and I think the space is just evolving, but it's a good spot. It's a good spot to work together. Like you said, it's exactly the right challenge, right? Like how would you improve the banking experience, and how would the banking experience leverage, or whatever experience, and how would that experience leverage the database underneath?
And look, and I think very well said. It took me back as you were talking a bit. I remember, you won't remember these names, but Bob Epstein, Mark Christensen, 2001, I was building with them the first Sybase replication server. So we had written papers on it, had built it, understood these problems early. These have been, and when you were building trading systems, that synchronous piece was important, but asynchronous was the most likely way to keep state in multiple geographies: New York, London, Tokyo, Hong Kong. So I think these are things that you have perfected. And Bill asked a question earlier. I gave you some, or maybe you asked it. I'll give you some examples about where we would use it. But when I think about it's a cliche that I've used before. It's cloud, social, mobile data security. Like when I think about where could I use you, multiple places in cloud type applications, mobile for sure, social, anything that is social in nature lends itself very naturally to here. Security, we talked about fraud, but there's also security aspects here that go at anything from authentication, authorization capabilities that have to be dynamic and nested. I think on the data front, it's where you are. So when I think about you, I think cloud, social, mobile data security are really the opportunities. What fits underneath that? And that's how I visualize when I close my eyes what you could do. And, we all have a little bit of evangelizing to do. You have a lot more evangelizing to do as a company, which is important, but so do we as users of the technology, because I succeed if you succeed. If I'm your only customer, you're not going to survive. So everybody has to grow and scale and go from there. And I like the Tesla model. I like the idea that like somebody is in a continuous upgrade cycle. As long as, again, you execute well, it's a very good model, and it stops all this bad legacy. There's a lot of good legacy, but it stops all this bad legacy from growing out of the ground and never going away.
By the way, your comment about Sybase, we've had a few recent requests to help move some of that to,
I'll bet.
to you
I'll
guys.
bet.
Yeah.
It's time. It's 20 years now, so it's time.
Exactly. Hey, before we wrap up, if I do have one question, Guy, and I don't know if it's similar to FiServ in the way you think about you serve a wide range of clients, right, from large to small, and Yugabyte, in some sense, has that same problem / opportunity, if you will, right? We're dealing with the largest enterprises around the globe, similar to you, in these discussions and implementing Yugabyte, and then we're also dealing with startups that just want to turn it on, credit card swipe, and get going. We're thinking of that as a technology continuum that we need to offer basically the same kind of capabilities across that whole spectrum, that how you classically would market segment things of enterprise, mid, small, those boundary lines are kind of going away. Is that true in your world as well, or do you have any advice for us?
It's probably the number one thing on my mind when we talk about this topic, because I think about it a little bit. I think about it the same but different. So first of all, remember, we have 4 million small businesses around the world that we do business with, and then we have 3,000 to 4,000 banks. And in between, pick your enterprise brand, Home Depot, Best Buy, Target, Walmart, like those are all our customers. So we have this tiering that we have to think about. But at the same time, it's all similar consumers. Consumers work with Walmart, consumers go to the deli, consumers, go to the bank. So we're thinking about our product stack on a regular basis now around how to segment. And then this issue of single tenancy, multi-tenancy is probably the biggest struggle at the moment, because we need leverage in the things that we do, and that often comes from multi-tenancy. But then you also want segmentation independence and the ability to turn dials around performance and cost and things like that. That drives you to less multi-tenancy, if not single tenancy, for large clients. So I haven't had enough experience with Yugabyte yet to know what all the capabilities look like in real practice, how to turn that dial effectively. But I would say that's a concern of mine. Again, not about you, about our future architecture and how we deal with it. Obviously, from every customer's perspective, we want the perception of single tenancy. We want everybody to think they got their own sandbox, their own environment, perfectly for them, and so on. So, so I think that's probably a key concern. And then, segmentation. I don't know if I have any great advice yet, because I don't know, I don't really know how the first answer plays out to be able to give you the second piece of it. But I do believe that, there are ways to optimize workloads, and workloads attach themselves to more customer journeys than customer types, right? Buying a house and lending is very different than buying a soda. And, I could go to trading examples as well. Trading a basket of stocks is very different than trading a single name. So a lot of this is really, you teaching us the capabilities and the characteristics, us playing back to you what works, what doesn't work, and fine tuning. But self-healing is important. Self-scaling is important. Auto configuration is important, because the goal here, I think, is also, I tell my infrastructure teams, you're never going to have more people than you have today. It's only going to be less. So customization better be really thoughtful, or the places where we do customization, we better be very thoughtful. And automation, also be very thoughtful on how many different buttons you choose to, you ever sit in the cockpit of a plane? There's a lot of buttons there. You don't want to touch 95% of them. Right. And I think it's the same here. Knowing that you could, if you have a problem at your disposal, is great, but you don't really want to touch 95% of those. So the auto configuration with a few more dials for me to turn, depending on whether it's small business, large business, high transaction, low transaction, you know, structured, unstructured data, you know, things like that are really the way I think about the answer so far. But my bet is I'll have a better answer for you 6 months from today.
No, that's helpful, and thank you. And maybe Karthik, you want to comment, because this is the problem statement we're tackling. Really, is how do we make it more self-service, self-reliant? We have just launched our public cloud offering, right? And so the idea of having clients that can just get started and have the same experience that's candidly more automated than the work we're doing with your organization, but the learnings from that should be applicable across the whole spectrum. So maybe Karthik, you want to comment?
Yeah. I think this is pretty similar to your comment, Guy, on how collecting data actually helps you make informed decisions, right? Like, I mean, AI, but like also applying the AI back, right? So it's kind of a similar situation we're seeing with the cloud, where even if the workloads themselves are small, there's a lot of different types of workloads that come in. And simply by virtue of the volume being very high, it's difficult for us to go to every single one of them and make sure they're running optimally. So there's got to be a different approach that we take, where, you know, you're able to kind of figure out not every suboptimal workload needs to be improved, right? Like, it's just, that's more of like an engineering need to improve things rather than a practical business value, right? Like, hey, if you improved a workload and you save $1, it's probably not even worth touching it, just let it go, right? But on the other hand, if you can save 100,000, yeah, totally worth it, we should do it, right? So it's really about these telltales and cues, and like, how do you characterize them without really characterizing them? And that requires data and visibility into the workloads themselves. So I think it's an interesting mix. Like, one of the early decisions we made at Yugabyte was to make sure that it's not just the database that can run in public and private, it's also the DBaaS, or the control plane, that can run in both public and private, right? So our public cloud actually just hosts we host the same control plane that we, you know, for example, that like FiServ or any other enterprise would use inside their organization, right? Now, the advantage on the public cloud is we have visibility into workloads, workload characteristics, tuning, what goes on, and we don't have equivalent amount of visibility, and rightfully so, into these organizational deployments, right? So the good part, though, is we're now trying to bridge the two sides to see how we can get these learnings and make them easier to detect and auto-tune, self-tune, or at least, you know, if we can't go that far, at least raise a hand and say, look, something's wrong here. Somebody needs to look at it, which itself is half the problem. Because if you have 1,000 databases and you just need to look at 5 of them, it's a lot easier than going to 1,000 and making sure they're okay, right? So things like that. There's other interesting patterns that are coming up. Like, for example, in the cloud, we have to solve for ourselves the AMI refresh problem, right? For example, you want to change the OS because you want to keep it up with the latest security patches, right? Now, this is not something we would have traditionally thought about automating as a database DBaaS maker inside the organization, but now we're seeing that acutely enough for ourselves that we're thinking, you know what, why don't we just put this into the platform that, you know, a lot of enterprises can derive value from? So yeah.
That's a key issue.
Right, so
sure.
yeah. So a lot of these type of cross-pollination is something that we're starting to see, and I think it'll just accelerate into the future. But I think the advantage or the fortunate advantage, we didn't know it'll play so big in the future. But anyways, the decision back then of keeping the same control plane on the two sides, right? That was really the critical piece that enables this for us. But we are seeing this quite a bit. So it's pretty similar to what you say. There's really tiny micro workloads from different, you know, SMBs, very different ones. But, you know, the workload types, some of them are similar, some of them are diverse. And then there's larger companies with larger workloads, a single workload spanning a lot of volume, right? So we see both variety. So multi-tenancy, all of that starts coming in.
Yeah, good. You're on the right path.
So as we wrap up, Guy, going forward with our engagement, what's top of mind for you for metrics that you're going to watch for, you know, to deem this successful, that our partnership and the efforts underway are keeping on pace with your expectations?
You know, there's probably 2 categories at least. One is maybe one is EQ and IQ. So the first is, how easy is the company to work with? And I think to some degree you want it to be somewhat, quote, automated. But on the other side, you're going to have to teach a generation of people how to use your product effectively, interact with it, and advance it. So the first piece of advice I would give you, and then one of the key measurements that I think will come out of it, is I believe half of your success will be dictated by how well you listen. And most smart people don't listen. So, you know, your company at best right now, at best is good, at best, because you haven't had enough experiences to make it great yet. You will. The more you listen, the more you'll make it great. So I think the first metric, which I know you would have never expected me to say, is how well you listen and how well you partner. And partner means teach and bring along. And, you know, like the biggest problem I have right now is people in my own company say, why do I need another database? Right? They do. They do. Why do I need another one? Now, the smart ones, I don't have to give the answer to. They're just teasing me. The ones that haven't seen the, you know, haven't smelled the coffee yet, then those, you know, those we have to bring along and teach and help them understand. And you'll do that, and I'll do that, and we'll do that, and we'll get there. But I think listening is really key in how you partner. I think other than that, I would say the three main metrics to me are really going to be around performance. Like, our workloads are only increasing. So can we get performance? And performance might not be the traditional TPC benchmarks, right? The performance is really around the single tenancy, how much multi-tenancy can I get and still get the output that I desire. You know, aside from performance, availability is key. The third one is true state, and state means can I really have you know, real-time state, or certainly near real-time state in multiple locations, so that I could truly provide either the multi-tenancy to a broader scale that I'm talking about, or true independence for regions and things like that to get past some of the privacy onshore processing and things like that. So, you know, I think those are key. And then the last one is really just around automatic. I guess I'll call it automatic, like watching the auto features, auto scaling, auto, you know, and self-healing, things like that, making sure I don't want to touch this thing. I really want it to be like the best, you know, toy I've ever owned in my life, and that it just does what it needs to do every single day, low maintenance and high value. And, you know, those are some of the things. And those all turn into like a certain set of metrics, but at a high level. That's why I call it EQ and IQ. I think some of it is about the company and the personality of the company and how you bring the product to customers in the market. And the others are true metrics to be sure that we could get the workloads done and activity. These APIs are important too, Karthik. I think your points around what you've done here, how you've structured them, like that'll be the test of time. Can they really hold true to getting everything we need in and out, of this environment? So those are special metrics that are, on maybe the third category, but those first two are pretty important.
Yeah, that's great, Guy. And obviously we'll keep tracking that, especially your comments about the EQ side of it, right? The skills and the transfer. We have a bunch of things we're doing on that front. So it'll be interesting to maybe do another one of these a year from now, and we'll do a scorecard.
It's probably a good idea. And you know this one because Pivotal was the same thing. Pivotal was not an easy product for people to digest. Why do I want to do this? What are the things that it gives me? Boy, that's awful expensive. And is that really a proprietary solution? Like the combination of you guys, that's why I like you guys know all the answers to the questions. Don't forget the questions and listen with both ears. My mother used to say, it goes in one ear and out the other. You only listen with one ear. That's why God gave you two. Listen with both ears.
Awesome, guys. I really appreciate your time. Any closing other comments?
I don't think so. I'm just proud I'm proud of you guys and the company. I'm proud to be in this partnership. I'm excited about what the opportunities are for both of us. And, I couldn't thank you more for your flexibility and patience to date. And hopefully nothing but good comes out of it for both of us.
Appreciate it, Guy. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Take care.
Okay. See you later.